Hello and welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Sales. Today we are thrilled to be joined by Jaime Diglio, who I had the pleasure of meeting actually at Revit Up 18 in our back last October, and saw you speaking on a panel. And just even in our intake and talking before the show, one of the most refreshing things about you that I found is just very transparent, very honest, and willing to talk about things in a very blunt way, not skirting any issues and all that stuff. So I'm thrilled to have you here. I'm super excited. And I know you are the president of SomethingNew. You're a mom, you're a coach, and you're really focusing on helping people inspire and rewire their sales teams. And I love that phrase, rewiring a sales team. So tell us a little bit more kind of about what you're doing and what's going on.
Sure. So yeah, it really is. It's about everything that I focus on is about how do you help shift mindsets, right? Like we live in a society where we all fear change, but the reality is we have to change to grow, and sort of making change something fun and not scary. And so for me, my background, is many years as a top sales professional at Gartner. Built a very large business there from the ground up, and then I moved to Microsoft. And what I had the opportunity to be part of those two organizations was in massive shifts from where they were taking their business when I started to where they were going, and to be part of that journey and sort of constantly reframing how you were looking at how you were positioning your offer and aligning that with the business strategy. And that takes a continuous, you can resist it, but when you resist it, it impedes everything that you're trying to do. You're trying to grow. So I'm really trying to make change something that people like. Selling through change is something that is fun, and it's like the development of yourself makes you more effective and valuable out in the market because you know how to pivot, you know how to grow.
That's such a good point, and I absolutely love that. I immediately wrote that down. We have to change to grow. And I think that that's something that, sometimes is a little counterintuitive, or sometimes we resist that, particularly in sales, because when you develop your strategy, your process, and it's working, oftentimes people are really reluctant to kind of deviate from that. And I love this idea, and I think the best salespeople are the ones that are kind of always testing, always tinkering, always sort of adjusting their approach, their strategy, so that they can get to that next level. Mm. And so one of the things that I'm hoping you can kind of talk with us about, obviously one of our big focuses for this podcast is all about kind of the underrepresented people on a sales team. And I know you've got a lot of experience, particularly in hiring and retaining and kind of cultivating women talent on sales teams. And I'd love to get your perspective on how has that changed over the course of your career, and where do you see, kind of the state of women in sales today?
Great question. Well, candidly, I grew up in sales environments where I was really one of the only women. And I would say, and I'm working in industries in financial services and in technology and insurance, I was always the only female in the room. And what I tell people is I'm okay and I'm comfortable. I'm thankful for that, right? Like being comfortable in a room with men, but I celebrate being in a room with women. Mm-hmm. And I think that one of the things that I continue to, when I'm, working with companies and helping advise them, because a lot of leaders will come to me, male leaders, and say, we're having a problem with, retaining our female talent. And I'm like, yeah, well, how are you? Men and women are we're wired differently. This whole thing about, I'm all about, continuing to elevate the position of women in sales, but we can't just do it with all the women. It has to be the men too. And we are better together. We are so much better together because the way that we think right? We complement each other and we see each other's blind spots and we fill those blind spots. And that's why teams that are filled, combined with men and women, are stronger. And so what I'm seeing is that leaders are now paying attention. They do know that more women in sales specifically is more money, right? Women, I mean, it is because
totally.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, it's not that we're saying we don't need men in sales. We absolutely do. But what we want to is acknowledge that what women bring to the table is a way to connect all the pieces. Like I was talking with someone about this the other day. Women, like, have you guys heard of the term of like the fourth industrial revolution?
Yes.
Yeah.
So great. So when we think about like going from the third industrial revolution, which is like when computers were invented and you have these hierarchies and you work in a company and you like type in, you sit in your cubicle and you work all day and in 30 years you get a pension and then you're good, right? That is no longer, right? And so that sort of compartmentalization of things, men naturally compartmentalize and they're really, really good at it. And it's super valuable. Mm-hmm. Women, when we think about the fourth industrial revolution, is the Internet of Things. It's the mashup. It's basically taking all those historical silos and taking the information across all those to produce new offers. So if you think about it, that's how women are wired. Yeah. We literally are like 1,000 tabs open, right? Like, and we're like, we see things that nobody else sees. And so that's why it's so valuable to have women and men together seeing what they're trying to do, specifically around business strategy, talent strategy, people strategy, dealing with client situations, that it's like women are so valuable. The challenge is the leaders, right, have not shifted the way that they communicate with men and women differently and know that men and women like listen differently. Like I had a female sales professional who, I mean, the amount of top performing sales women that I work with and talk to, because like they tell me about the things they're struggling with. Like I had one that I worked with and she just closed like the biggest deal of the year. Mm-hmm. And the boss gets on the pipeline call and he like rips everybody a new one. And she's in her head going, oh my God, like, I think like he's talking to me. And she's all in this story in her head, like she's not doing enough. And what I realized is like, that's her opportunity to then produce the leadership move and go back to her boss and say, listen, like, this is how I heard it. But knowing that women, like, we hold on to that stuff. When people tell us feedback, we really listen and we're eager for feedback. So when men leaders typically say something, women and men listen differently. So that's why it's important for male leaders specifically to know that they need to coach their people differently.
Yeah. That's a great point.
Oh God. Yeah. That's a fraught point.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just in that situation, which I think a lot of women have been in, where you're in that kind of more, there's still prevalent kind of boiler room sort of environment where it's super aggressive, macho, you hear the fire and brimstone speech. How do you know when and if it is appropriate to go and give that feedback to your boss? Because that's a terrifying thing. Because am I being overly sensitive? And you say women are wired differently. I think most women tend to overthink and compensate and care about what the other person's thinking. But especially when you're dealing with a career move, it's, oh gosh, I don't want to deliver this feedback to my boss saying, this is how I heard it. And is this what you meant? If I'm completely off base and then I look like a crazy, overly emotional woman.
Right. Well, because it's like, you're either a bitch, right? Yeah. Or you're too sensitive, or you're not strong enough. And I think that's one of the hardest things for female sales leaders as well, right? Is like, anyway, if there's any sort of poke at, like, if they've got any sort of dip in their productive or in their revenue numbers or whatever, it's like, she's not strong enough. It's just like the default where they go. And that's where it's so important to be rebuilding the narratives, not only within the women, sales professionals, sort of like, that's a story in your head. It's a story in your head about what you think based off of all the previous experiences you've had. Now, your boss might be just being a jerk, just in general. Maybe he's in a bad mood. You have no idea what happened before that conversation that made him be in that mood. Mood is everything. And that's something when I work with leaders, teaching them how to be aware of how they're showing up with their teams. Because it's like the mood you show up in, people notice that. And if you're in a mood for a while, right, like that becomes like your temperament. And then people just expect that, you know, of you. So helping leaders be self-awareness is something I work very much on these sales leaders with. But the first step is they have to actually acknowledge that it's something that they want to shift. That's a hard part of it.
So it's so interesting, and I forget what country this was in, but they did this study of judges and parole judges. And basically, if you're a potential parolee, you're a convict or whatever, and you're up for parole, if you get the slot right before lunch, there's no way in hell you are getting paroled. Because and literally the swing in the numbers is absolutely astounding, where right after breakfast or right after lunch, the judges were way more favorable. And you think, I mean, those are some serious stakes, right?
Yeah.
And we know in an office where the stakes are a little bit lower, it's the same thing. And, you know, I love Brene Brown. She's got a way of saying this where she says, you should go up to someone and say, the story I'm telling myself is because our instinct is like, well, you did this, or you said, no, you've come up with this story in your head, to your point. And you've got to know that you're applying your own narrative, you know, your own interpretation to what's going on.
Right. And that's where I think for sales leaders, just leaders in general, their ability to be transparent with their people. Like, we don't want to tell them all the garbage that's going on, but I really think that like that authenticity of like showing up and being real is super important, because when you hold things back, what do people do?
They hold things back too.
They hold things back. They hold things back, but they also connect the dots on their own. And we always, when somebody like doesn't tell us the whole story, I know I will come up with like the most outrageous sort of interpretation of it. Yeah.
Right? So when these leaders are like, oh, you know, it's secret, we can't tell you until this time or whatever, all this like BS. And, you know, usually there's some, you know, if there is some truth to it or whatever, but sort of that's like that importance layer, right? It's like, you know, sort of, I was thinking about this the other day when I think about people that really decide to be leaders. And I really do believe like the title is you are not the leader because of the title, right? The person that people follow is the leader. Right? So just having the title, and the question is, we have a lot of people who just want the title, right? Because they believe that that is something that automatically they get authority through that. But you don't have your people. Your people, they know that you just want, you know, someone told me, they're like, I felt like my boss, like if he got promoted to like vice president of like toilet paper, you know, that they would take that. And it's like true. And you know that, right? When you work with people, you know when they just want that title and that next rank, you know, rung on the ladder. Mm-hmm. And I talk to candidates all day long, and the thing that they want, and I don't believe this is any different than people that are already in sales roles in organizations, they just want to be like, listened to. They want to be developed. They want to feel that their boss has their back.
Yeah.
You know, and that trust that is lacking is where it's like we have such a turnover rate in so many of these companies, because everyone is just starving for leadership. Starving. They're craving it.
So what do you think, okay, for the people out there that are, because we know how it works in sales, you wind up in a sales leadership role because you did well as a salesperson. You usually get zero actual training or coaching on how to be a leader or how to be a manager. So for all of the people out there that are in that position and they want to be an amazing leader and they want to be an amazing manager, what are some of the like kind of foundational things that they can do to cultivate that sense of trust on their team and create a team culture where everybody wants to be there?
Mm-hmm. Well, I used to get people would come to me because I built teams from scratch. I took over teams that were not doing well. Like I fired people, I've hired tons of people, and a lot of people would come up to me and say, Jaime, like, how do you continuously have the team that everybody wants to be on and that performs well, like at the top, right? And what I would say to people was that I do three things. One is that I hire people for their strengths. So I figure out who do I already have and what are they strong at. So what do most managers do? They pick out the things that people are terrible at and they try to like make them better at that. I do the reverse. I figure out what are your gifts? What are the things that make you different, make you strong and be valuable to the rest of this team, right? So I'm literally hiring people that bring in something new. Mm-hmm. So I would tell people this, and then I would say the second thing I do as a leader is I understand each of my individual people and understand what their ambition is. What do they really want for themselves, for their family? Why are they working here? What do they believe in? How can I help them? Where do they want to go and where do they want to grow? And then the third thing I would say to people as a leader is I would tell my people continuously that I believe in them. And I would tell them over and over again. And so when I would tell other managers or sales managers or VPs or whatever this, they kind of, no, they consistently would look at me like I was an alien. They're like, what? And they kind of would laugh. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's not rocket science. Your people, if you know that your boss believes in you, they're after, your best intentions and they focus on your strengths, like you're going to like, be like, oh my God, I belong here. They believe in me. I'm part of a team. I have something to contribute. But what was so funny about it was like every person I talked to would be like, that's crazy. I'm like, well, you asked me. And so I keep saying it over and over. I'm like, this is what you do. It's not rocket science. And so when I'm coaching leaders, I think one of the most important, like specifically new managers as well, is I think that one of the challenges, and I might get myself in trouble for this, but I don't really care because it's true, is that organizations have put so much emphasis and money, right, into online training and development.
Yep.
Right? So everything is like self-serve. It's like, really, like you're a leader of people. The practice is in the engaging with people. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have any way to get coached in your organization, like I work with a lot of people on the outside who are new leaders who are like, yeah, I need outside perspective. So they hire me to help them with their leadership philosophy, how they're showing up, and how do they bring a new way to think, because that you need that inside out approach. You have to have someone you trust to help you show up differently, because that's how you're going to make money. That's how people are going to want to be on your team. That's how you're going to recruit people. And you have to be constantly learning and bringing in new ideas, new thinking, new people. So, I mean, I could go on forever, like talking about some of the things that are like really important. Definitely building your network, and if you don't hire an outside coach that's really invested in you and your development, make sure that you have a group of people around you that are at the level where you want to be going, right? It's like you're up-leveling yourself because you have new commitments. Like you're become a leader because you have some sort of, I would guess, right? And this is some of the questions I ask people as leaders. It's like you decided to take the leadership role because you have some sort of ambition to empower and inspire people. So how are you thinking about that? Like, how are you speaking about it? How are you, talking about it? What are your real goals? So getting leaders to what I work with them and have them create their leadership bumper sticker is what I call it. Is like, what's your leadership philosophy? What do you believe in? What do you stand for? What are you after? And so then that allows your teams to understand who you are, what you're about, and it creates that bond, right?
I think that all of that advice is so powerful. And I think often, and this is something Ashley and I talk about it a ton, is that most salespeople, I think sometimes it's a little bit different when you get to a leadership role, because companies are a little bit more likely to help you get that kind of external advice or coaching. But especially when you're earlier on in your career, you get that like 2 weeks of training when you start the job, and there's like no other coaching. And oftentimes your manager, your boss is only a year or two ahead of you in terms of their career, and they often haven't gotten that kind of coaching and leadership training either. So you're kind of, you get training for the job, but not coaching for kind of the job you want.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And I think a big part of that I'm seeing as well a lot. I mean, with this whole thing about younger professionals not being like having no work ethic or whatever, I call total BS on this. This is like, I have never been more impressed with these, I shouldn't say kids, but like these young adults. I mean, they are so smart. They are starving, like I said, starving for coaching. And I think that there's been this, I keep saying I think, but I really know, right? Because I've been observing this, throughout all of my time at Gartner and Microsoft, and, noticing how the shift of technology has made it so it's almost like a self-serve. Oh, we don't actually have to engage or talk to our people because we've invested in technology that is going to help them be productive. And it's such a the organizations that we work with that are really understanding that people strategy, coaching your people is the job, right?
100%. And I see this a lot in my day-to-day too. I think there's an important distinction that needs to be drawn, like we as salespeople need to discuss as a profession, but it's the distinction between coaching and training. A lot of training can be automated. A ton of it can be automated or hosted online or whatever else. Coaching by necessity has to be one-to-one, usually face-to-face, whether it's through video or something else, but you need those cues. And you need that personal interaction. And I actually agree with your thought on the generational thing. My theory for where that idea or that kind of perception came from is the coming generation learns differently because they've had a very different educational experience. So they are used to things changing every 3 to 6 months. So they don't get bored, but they assume they've done something wrong when they don't get a promotion every 3 months. So you have to be explaining to them, hey, this is normal, it's okay. But at the same time, it's not that they're lazy or entitled, it's they don't understand. They don't know, and there's no one to tell them that. And at the same time, it's this weird thing, I think, where they're so hungry for training. It's like starving in a buffet. It's there, they just don't know how to access it.
Yes.
So people think, oh, they're lazy, they don't understand, they don't know how to do this. It's like, no, they need someone to take their hand and show them you can't eat this stuff.
Right. Absolutely. And it's like, well, we've given it, it's like sort of, I love that analogy. Can you guys hear me?
It dropped a little bit there.
Okay. The starving in a buffet, because it's so common now to have so much information. Think about it. We have there's so many decisions. I just did like a post about this because of a woman who came up to me after an event that I spoke at. And she told me how she just is so stressed out all the time about being average. And I was like, what? Number one, I said to her, okay, so tell me, like, what would above average look and feel like? She didn't have an answer.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you're basically spending your entire life feeling like bad about yourself, but you actually have no way to a standard for how you feel good about yourself. So you're just like beating on yourself every day, all day. And I reminded her, and this is what I put the post about, is like, I reminded her, I'm like, I am average at so many things, and below average at way more things. And I'm way more. And I'm above average at a couple things. And like our job, right? And I think that's a leader's, especially like a leader's job, but an individual's job too, is to figure out what are the things that I'm really talented at? Mm-hmm. What are the things I'm good at? What are the things when I'm doing it, I'm lit up. I could do it for hours. And those are the things that are your gifts. And so I think because we have so many leaders out there that are just so focused on looking at the things like, oh, new hire, can't do this, done, disposable, right? It's we've created a way. I see there's so much similarity with dating and relationships as it is with hiring and retaining talent. It's like people have become disposable. You use them, and I haven't been in the dating market for a long time, but friends I know that have, right? It sort of is that same idea. And people just they want real connected relationships. And like you said, the buffet of all this content out there and this story, and that's part of the thing that I kept pressing into when I was at Gartner and Microsoft. I'd be working with all these companies that were trying to digitally transform. And we would think about, when a company wants to go from where they are today to where they're going, there's a change, it's a change curve. And we would always talk about people, process, and technology. And we're there to help them with the people, that we help there with the process and sell them, and it's like sell them the technology. Yeah. And I would always be the only one in the room going, wait a minute, what about the people? What about the people? Because you're going to spend $50 million on all these things that are supposed to make you productive and process-oriented, whatever. What about your people? And there was no, you need people in the room to raise their hand and go, wait, the people are the most important part of your business. And I see that we're flipping that now, where smart companies know that hiring the people and their differences is their power, right? That is the competitive advantage. And so all these other companies that are like, well, we just want to automate it. We want to make, everybody the same, robots, whatever. I'm like, do you want to buy from a robot? Like, if I'm going to buy from a robot, I'll buy from a robot, not the person that talks like a robot, because they've been trained to so that coaching piece is so critical, and the development. I'll
say it's interesting hearing you talk about that. The first thing that kind of came to my mind was I had this strong callback to when you started this, talking about kind of the masculine and the feminine mind and compartmentalizing versus drawing those connections. I mean, you can almost see it as a business spectrum where we've gone very heavily into the masculine side of the brain, compartmentalizing, replaceable, widgets and all that. And now we're moving more back to the other side where it's the more feminine side of the brain, where it's, okay, let's figure out the connections. How can we get the people into, integrated into the process, into the technology, making sure you've got those callbacks to get everybody successful, and understanding that, the more connections, the more coaching, but connections, even like you say, I've heard a lot of people say people buy from people. If I want to go buy from a robot, I'll go online.
Right.
Trust me, there are many days when I don't want to deal with people, even as a salesperson.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But the whole point of a salesperson is to be a person and to make that human connection. And the only way you get good at that is by having it modeled to you.
Yeah. Well, and look, like there's no company out there that doesn't have a competitor that can do at least 80 to 90% of what their product can do. Like it just doesn't exist anymore. Our market is so saturated. And so the way you differentiate is your customer experience and your people. Mm-hmm. And it starts with sales. Yeah. And I think a lot of companies don't always recognize that. So I'm curious, Jaime, like with all of your experience, what are some of the ways that, whether it's leaders on the team or people themselves, can figure out what they really are, what are their strengths? Because I think that's sometimes the hardest part when you're early in your career, or when you're managing a team and you're already kind of spread thin and you've got, 8 to 12 people underneath you. What's the process for understanding, the individual people's strengths so that you can find ways to maximize those?
Yeah, really good question. So when I talk about, can you hear me? Did it cut out?
There we go. Maybe.
There you go.
Oh, okay. So make sure, sometimes I have an issue with my Zoom. You can hear me okay?
Quiet. You're a little quiet.
Hold on. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Maybe I have too many tabs open.
I can't relate to that at all.
I know. Like, it was like the first like 87,000 emails, and then this person has none. Yeah, I'm on this. So really good question, because I wanted to like make sure to emphasize the coaching, the ongoing coaching doesn't just have to be from the leader, right? There's all different ways. So creating a culture, like I call them culture bubbles, okay? You can create a culture bubble in your team as the leader. So you're a sales manager and you've got 10 people, 12 people. Over 12 is like crazy. I've had like 15, 16, and I'm like, oh my God, I feel like it's like kindergarten class. I'm like counting heads, right? But one of the things I think is so important as the leader is to announce, like giving language to, hey, you know, Casey, I've noticed you're really good at this, right? You're really good at, you know, the whole, you know, working with a difficult client and how to negotiate with them and have them, you know, be on the same side of the table as you. And so I would work that with you. And I would say, you know, I really want you to show the team on how you do that. And I would do that with every single person that I noticed the thing they were good at. And then that would be the thing that they could teach others on the team. So you literally are creating a way for the team to like do coaching sessions with each other based off of what they're really good at and what I've noticed, and you're triangulating that with the other people on the team. So if I was like, you know, and this is also one of my favorite books is called Quiet Leadership. Have you guys heard of it before?
Haven't.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I have so many books, but that's one just as I'm thinking, because it's essentially like, as a sales manager, you can get very caught up in always giving the answers, right? And being the one person to go to. And when you're in that environment, you know, it's super easy to just get the answers, but it's teaching people how to think about their thinking, right?
Yeah.
So how do you think about your thinking? And when you do that as a coach, so teaching managers, teaching leaders how to help grow people is having them think about how they're already thinking and coming to the answer themselves, because then that gives them more power and confidence to then grow and keep pushing. That's how you develop talent. And so I use it so that I, you know, would constitute new ways for the team to work together, where they would create little, you know, times where they would get together at noon virtually noon on every Thursday or something, or I'd let them create it so that they could be learning from each other. So like a perfect example, one of the things I love doing is pretending I'm a client and then doing a fishbowl role play where have you guys ever heard of that before? So you basically, I'm the client, and then Ashley, you start kicking off the meeting. And then I'll quickly then go, all right, Casey's turn. And you guys are all part of it. And you keep going around. And then, you know, you're hearing, you're on, but you're listening, and you're an observer and you're a participant all at the same time. So there's lots of different techniques for how you can bring the whole team together to learn together. That team-based selling, right? Even if you have a configuration where you're working on separate accounts, when you work it together, you then learn how to really support each other. You know,
and that's so important from a lot of different things, because one of the things I think, especially when we talk about young leaders and young managers, like Casey said, a lot of times you're promoted because you're good at your job, which is great, but you're good at your way of doing your job. You will, I guarantee you, end up managing someone who needs to do their job a different way than you did.
Yep.
So making sure you're building that culture where you're inspiring people to help each other. And if you don't have a manager that's driving this, by the way, you can totally drive it yourself. Just get a couple of coworkers and jump in a room and do this stuff.
Yes.
Do not wait for your manager to do it if you don't have something like this on your team. Just create it yourself, whether it's role playing or scheduling out a topic of, you know, various interest. I stumbled into this early in my own career because I somehow became the tools person on the team. And it got to the point where basically I was spending so much time just answering little ad hoc questions that my boss said, okay, no, we can't do this anymore. Mondays at noon, Ashley's going to go sit in a room. If you have questions, go grab her then. And then eventually it turned into like, we did a couple weeks of that. And then it turned into, hey, I don't really have, I think everyone's good on the tools now, but hey, Kat, how are you able to get so many callbacks from voicemails? Nobody ever returns my voicemails. It turned into this like organic, just Monday best practice sharing. It doesn't have to be anything formal. It doesn't have to be anything intense, but just hearing how other people do the job and get success. And I mean, it's one of the cheesiest jokes I have about sales, but I always say every company has research and development, and sales has research and development too, but we call it R&D, and it's rip off and duplicate. I'll take all the best tricks that everyone else is using and mold them together in my own unique way through my own brain. But you have to build in that flexibility. You have to get the exposure to that other way of doing things, and inspire others to do it.
I totally agree. Like your leadership is like, leadership is not you being an individual contributor and deciding, hey guys, I think this is really important. Would you want to, do a call with me to sort of work through this, particular thing that I think a lot of us are having challenges on? What do you say? It's like, that's leadership.
100%.
You don't wait for your manager. You don't wait for your manager to decide something, to do something new, and a good manager, and this is sort of, again, where the self-awareness is, I'm very clear, and I always have been, like, if I don't know something, then I'm like, listen, I'm not the expert in that. Like, go talk to Casey, because, my value is in my ability to see the value in others.
Yep.
Right? And that's how we grow together. Like, I literally look at teams as like you're arm in arm and you're lifting each other together. And you can constitute those ways that you're going to show up as a team. If your leader isn't open to them, it doesn't matter. Like, you're going to create it. And then once it starts working, they're going to go, whoa, that's pretty cool. That's working. And then it's like, then your team's doing really well. And people are like, well, what are you doing? And then, like you said, Ashley, then it becomes, people start noticing. So it's like the order matters, and you have to like take responsibility for your own leadership and your own development. It's not just going to come. It's not going to just come from the manager.
Yes.
So it takes both, and every situation is different.
Mm-hmm. So what if you're in a situation that is more hostile to that? Like, you're working with a manager or leadership who sees that as a potential threat, or your coworkers aren't really interested in sharing?
You build your network. You talk to people. I'm all about, if the amount of money I've made from talking to the person next to me on a plane, on a train, I'm constantly curious. So when I'm seeing people that are really I'm interested in, that I admire something that they're doing, I let them know. I say, well, that was really cool. And I've either followed them on social media. I love different perspectives, because I feel like one of the biggest challenges we run into in these bigger organizations is that there's a lot of groupthink, and they've literally taken out, I'm sensitive to this because I'm like the maverick, I sort of like always colored outside the lines, and I was like, I'm going to do it differently because I know it will work. But I think we've become so prescriptive in organizations. We're like telling people like taking smart people. I think Steve Jobs said this, right? It's like, you take smart people and you put them in your company, and then you tell them what to do. It's like, no, you remove all the innovations. You wonder why you can't get growth, because nobody can think, because you've basically told them what to think.
Yep.
So in order to show up and really take control in that type of environment, if it's one you want to stay in, right? Because I would question, is this something you want to stay in? Because you could be the best leader or a producer in a toxic environment, and they will still push you out, right? But how do you learn from that and go, all right, I know more now. Like, I'm all about take a bad situation and learn from it. But figure out, how do you then, I had situations in my career, well, I always have, where I've got people who I was learning more from my clients.
Mm-hmm.
They were on board with me and helping me with my development. And I'd be like, who should I go talk to? Who are their salespeople that you really admire? Because good people know good people, right? And ultimately, it's the bond. This is how our business is built today at SomethingNew, is on the bond where people trust us, because they've worked with us before, and there is social proof that, we do good things. So it's all about connecting to good people that you believe, like, you pull it from like a Simon Sinek, right? It's like, that believe in the same things that we believe. We're naturally attracted to them. And as you're younger in your beginning of your sales career, is how are you noticing the people that when they say something that you're like, wow, that was really good, right? You learn how to connect with those people, and you're slowly in your time gravitating towards some people and away from others.
Yeah.
You're growing every day. So I think, it's sort of zooming out. It can be really toxic, and maybe in that situation you explained, like really shut down. But if you zoom out and go, okay, well, what can I actually learn in this situation? It's building a network, following people that, inspire you inside or outside, and really, being committed to learning every day.
So I asked that from a place of, I hit that wall earlier in my career, and whether it was a real barrier with my manager or just a story I told myself.
Yeah.
Exactly that, building that outside network, reaching out to some people, just changing up your feed can be it's amazing the impact changing up your feed can have on not just your mood, but your performance. It's kind of silly, but
that's
life.
And that's part of, why I'm doing what I'm doing today, because I would see so many really talented people stuck in a story about what someone has thought about them in their current configuration, right? Mm-hmm. Under bad leadership, and literally like believing that is like their value, and it's not true, and sort of helping them to get unstuck and pivot and put them into an environment. Like, you pivot 1 degree, you go from a place where it's toxic and you're not valued and they want to get rid of you, to a place where like, oh my God, we've been looking for you. You have everything.
Yes.
And like, that does happen, but you have to get a network, and you have to get people that around you that are committed to either wanting to work with you. It's like when you meet great people, I'm sure all three of us are like this. When I meet great people, I'm like, oh my gosh, where can I put them? Like, I if I can't hire them, like, I always want to hire everybody, but I can't. But I'm always like, where can I put them? Mm-hmm. Right? Who do I think would work really well with them? And it's finding those people that are going to really be the connectors for you. And that's what I love about what we do today, because it's like, there's all these amazing people out there. They're just sort of stuck in environments where they, the people, the leadership is not seeing their value.
So now you have to, because you've, I'm sure, piqued lots of people's interest here. So if people want to work with you, how do they come and find you? Where can they connect with you?
Oh, but definitely on LinkedIn. Yeah. I mean, I'm all over LinkedIn. I think that is the best way to find me. Yeah. So I would say connecting with me on LinkedIn. I would say my email address, but everybody spells my name wrong. Do you know Jamie Shanks?
No.
Sales for Life. I did a call with him yesterday, and I was joking, and we spent like the first 5 minutes talking about how everybody spells our names wrong, because the name Jaime, Jaime @Try Something New Now. But honestly, LinkedIn is the best way, because then I get to see who you are. This is sort of also then sort of, this is my plea to people, is that you've got to stay active with your network on LinkedIn.
Yeah. You
can update your profile. People who are like, it's been 10 years since they've done anything on LinkedIn or whatever. I'm like, oh my God, like, it needs to reflect, your LinkedIn needs to reflect who you are and what you believe. But yeah, that LinkedIn is the best way to connect with me. Or just Google my name.
Okay.
And we'll of course link to all of this stuff in the show notes, so people can literally just click a button.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Awesome. So, and with that, we're going to move to what we affectionately call the lightning round. So we're going to ask you, a series of questions designed to be kind of rapid fire, just the first thing that comes to your mind, just end on a little bit of silliness and fun. So kicking it off, what's your morning routine? It
depends. Usually it's like, right now it's like, my husband's a teacher, so he's home, which is great. So it's getting the kids out to camp. And then, getting my coffee. I'm on this celery juice kick. So I've been
You
doing
and
this.
me both, girl.
I've been doing it. I really think it's it's for another conversation, but
Yeah.
so I do that. So that every day is different, and I like that.
Yeah. So at the end of a tough day or tough week, what's your guilty pleasure?
Oh my God. One of my favorite things to do, I'm dead serious, is sitting at the kitchen table and playing cards with my kids. We play Uno.
That's awesome.
Like I spent so many years not being able to do that. There's like the little things that I really appreciate. And the fact that we do that with no devices, and it's just sort of brings you back to like, what are you really working for? That time with your kids.
That's wonderful.
So I know it's kind of boring, but it's like, that's the truth.
No, it's great.
That sounds amazing.
I'm kind of boring.
I have not played spoons in about 5 years, I think, and that was our card game growing up.
Oh.
It was a spoons and pit.
Time to bring it back, Ashley.
Oh yeah, I will. Yeah, I need to go. I'm flashing back to pit, and I really want to play that now because I had a lot of fun. And that was all buying and selling.
So. Okay. Yeah. We do. We play Uno and Phase 10.
There we go.
We bring Uno everywhere we go. Yeah.
Remember that. All right. What's the most embarrassing thing you've done in your sales career?
Oh my God. Most embarrassing thing I've done. Oh my God. I don't know. I mean, a lot. Probably like calling clients by the wrong name. Begging for business.
Oh yeah.
And not knowing the whole story. Like that, being really like getting pushed and pressured into, desperate situations. What else is embarrassing? Oh my God, there's got to be something really dumb that I've done. Embarrassing, like, a dinner.
I think it's a good sign that you can't think of something right away.
I'll get back to you on that. I guarantee that. I have no worry. Like, I mean, it is like all kinds of crazy stuff happens. Oh, actually, this is actually a good one. So I used to do, at Gartner, I would do the events. And I would always, I mentioned like all my clients were guys, and it was sort of like, I'm like the troop leader, I'm like, let's go, let's make sure we all stay together. And one time I had this guy who got so drunk, and he was like completely passed out, and I didn't know what to do, And like, I freaked out because it was like, I get like mama bear, and I don't know. I'm like, what am I going to do? It's like, it's uncomfortable because you're like, this person is, a kind of a senior person, and trying to figure out how are you going to take care of this situation? Like, I felt like it was on my watch, but had to like get people to go and help figure out how to get him back to his room, like get him so that he, some people like, they go crazy when they go to these events. That was like a, yikes.
Oh yeah. Okay. What's your pump up song?
I love High Hopes.
Yes.
That song, High Hope. Yeah. That's, I mean, my husband always like makes fun of me because I like the song of the day, he's more like the classics, and I love Billy Joel and stuff too. But I love High Hopes. And then there's that other one this, I should know the guy that sings it, but he sings, Hey Look Ma, I Made It, that song.
Oh yeah.
Like the storyline is not like, that's not my story, but I like the high idea of like, it sort of is like, well, what is making it mean? Right.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So those are two that I like, that off the top of my head.
Awesome.
I love it. What's your favorite sales book?
To Sell is Human.
Oh yes.
There we go. I love getting some variation in those. That's so much fun.
Yeah. And where was your last vacation?
My last vacation was Aruba.
Ooh.
Last summer.
That sounds fabulous.
We're due for one. Like my husband's a teacher, so we really just do vacation in the summers.
Very cool. All right, pick one person who's had a significant impact on your career.
Just one person. I would say one of my first boss in sales, her name was Michelle Shepard, and she took a chance on me. I didn't have a sales background. She saw something in me, and she believed in me, in the raw talent that I had. And she's a chief revenue officer now, but she stuck her neck out. And I think that having her as a first sales leader really taught me a lot about how do you dig in and believe, like, and really invest in your people. And she taught me so many ways. Like I don't think is common today in really leaders really taking care of their people. And that is something she's left that in with me. That's something that I continue to ensure that's the first thing I lead with when working with teams. It's all about your people trusting you.
That's awesome.
So cool.
And then last but not least, what is one thing you wish you had learned earlier in your career?
To have more confidence. I think it's sort of, if that's hard to say, because it's like you have to build the confidence. It doesn't, to not be such a people pleaser.
Yeah.
That's a big one for me, was like really trying to please everybody and be like the good girl. And, that's I think a lot of women struggle with that, wanting to be, take on so much. But yeah, the people pleasing, I think, at the end of the day, I think you get to a point where you realize that, some people are gonna appreciate you, others, you're not gonna be their cup of tea, and that's okay. Not everybody's gonna like you.
Yeah.
And it's okay. Like, that's like that. I always say to people, remember, it's like, they're all gonna laugh at you. They're all gonna laugh at you. It's like, what, people are so focused on themselves. Like, it's like, whatever.
Seriously.
Limits and saying what you believe.
Yeah.
Speaking, I wish that I had learned to speak my voice louder earlier in my career, but now that's why I'm helping others with gaining confidence and helping them to really identify their strengths, because it's something that I see that has massively helped me with my career.
Yeah. Well, it definitely shows. This has been one of the best conversations we've had so far. Super interesting. Yeah. And just know I'm going to be tweeting like a million quotes from you, because it was like quotable quote after quotable quote, which is really exciting. So and as we discussed earlier, we're going to have to do this again and dig into you as a working mom, because I think that's a huge one. And so, like, thank you so much for this. This was an awesome interview, awesome conversation. And I encourage anybody listening to reach out to Jaime, soak up her wisdom, but also hire her. So thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.